Yes, we've got you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to present this. This is, an early career network that we've been working on for the past 3 years, and something, very close to my heart. So hopefully we'll get more engagement from this team and have something to share. So the group is called, or thinking about building an international critical zone network of networks for the next generation through shared science, tools, data, and philosophy. And what I'm going to present here today is the past 2 years of AGU workshops that we did. Who were the participants, what kind of achievements and things that we have done over the past 2 to 3 years, and maybe review some opportunities that would be mutually beneficial for this team as well. So I left the last 10 to 15 minutes for an open discussion with this team. So I want to start here with the workshop leadership. We have 5 different people from across the world that belong to different critical zone networks. So from DOE watersheds to the French Oscar side, to the NSF critical zone observatories, Canadian sites, and then the German Torino sites. And then I have, an incredible early career cohort team that belong to different institutes, different disciplines, and without which this workshop and the organization wouldn't have been possible. So really kudos and a shout out to the team here. So what are we trying to do here, and what's going on? So we do know that these critical zone observatories basically exist throughout the world. What are critical zone observatories? These are instrumented field sites that basically monitor hydrology, water, energy fluxes, biogeochemical cycles, all the way from bedrock to the top of the canopy. And they go across different terrestrial and aquatic interfaces and across different climate and hydrobiogeochemical gradients. Why are they important? They're important because they are human habitats. Each of us lives within a watershed. They're important for sustaining, basic human needs and fulfilling a lot of the critical ecosystem services they provide. So given that background, of course, we have a network of these observatories all across the world. So you can see in the map below, each of these instrumented field sites from Australia to US to South America, everywhere you can see these sites popping up. But so far, each of these work in their siloed mode. So everybody thinks, this is my unique site. We are within a unique setting, and our local settings are governing how the watershed is functioning or how that critical zone is functioning. So everybody has built their own approach to solving problems. They have their own data repositories, their own models and mechanisms to look. So it's a very skewed view of working within these observatories so far. And if you zoom into each of these challenges, just even from their website, you can see the first one is from the German Torino sites. What they want to do, what their grand challenge science question is, to analyze these interactions between soil, vegetation, and atmosphere, as well as the effect of climate and land use changes. Then you look at the DOE watersheds, and they're looking at watershed responses to, again, climate change and stressors. You look at the Canadian Arctic site, they're talking about the future state of the critical zone. So you get the view, right? Everybody is looking through their own lenses, but everybody is struggling with the same questions, that we have these co-occurring stressors and co-occurring disturbances that are changing the functioning of our watersheds. Our critical zone functioning is getting changed. But, again, so the purpose of this group is really to reduce that fragmentation where people are not willing to share data or have their own traditional way of looking into these observatories and the science questions that are looking into. So I do want to say that this particular group didn't come together to provide a new infrastructure. We already have incredible existing infrastructure which we can use as a springboard for new modes of collaboration. So definitely the goal here is to think about that future behavior of these systems. Again, just reiterating that we don't know what the functioning would look like, what the water quantity, water quality is going to look like with, all of the climate stressors and all of the rapidly growing population, urbanization, and other disturbances across these sites. And the purpose of this particular group was to formally bring together early career scientists from across all of these critical zone networks and systematically tackle and think about these questions and predicting their systems and having the ability to share tools, approaches, workflows. So, in other words, there is a decrease on the emphasis of developing a new big international observatory network. That's not the purpose here. The emphasis is more on establishing a cohort of like-minded scientists who are interested in working across sites, in posing questions, that go beyond their individual sites, and in sharing, tools and models and developing some approaches together. And so, we looked into some of the community-based reports that were coming out. So this is the integrated hydroterrestrial modeling group that coalesced together in the US. And what they were talking about, you can look at the number of agencies that participated in this effort. I don't know if you guys see the mouse moving. Okay, yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And they were talking about how do we approach models? How do we ensure water security, and thinking about regional and national priorities related to securing our water securities. And that just required the coordination and integration across multiple sites and agencies. So everybody came together to pick up a few model use cases and, on which they're going to work together. And on the right here, what you can see is a NASAM report, which, it's called A Decadal Vision for Earth Science. I believe it came out in 2020. And what they said was, this is an all hands on deck moment. What we need is diverse, inclusive groups, and we need collaborative networks. We need people to be doing this cutting edge computational and field-based methods, but together. So it's an all hands on deck moment. And even some of the NSF calls that we are seeing are calling out to accelerating research through international network collaborations. So the vision for this particular workshop, guided by that community perspective, was how do we facilitate cross-site and cross-network knowledge? How do we synthesize what are the scientific drivers, what are the properties and processes studied, what are the instrumentation and modeling approaches used, and how are they different across these networks? And what this team really wanted to do was come together to identify a subset of prioritized grand challenge questions. So thinking about an indivisible problem, what can be tackled only through this approach of working across these network of networks and not by a single person, agency, or network. So we wanted to create this workshop really, again, as a platform for the early career community to come together, to think together, and focus on these coordinated transdisciplinary investigations. And of course, we want to train them in, the best themes. How do you discover data? How do you harmonize data? How do you use R and things like that? And we definitely wanted to stay connected, beyond the workshop. So this was AGU 2019. We had 5 participating networks. I called some of these out. So we had participation from DOE watersheds, the US critical zone observatories, the French Oscar sites, the German Tirreno sites, and Canadian sites, which really are fragmented. They have a lakes group, they have a permafrost group, so they don't work together as a critical zone observatory. But our team has provided them momentum to think about, how do we organize this as a critical zone observatory and doing all of this instrumentation and workings. And then, we were lucky to get support from both the DOE SBR program for travel to AGU and all NB, which supported some of the Oscar French scientists to come to this workshop. Even before the workshop, we were talking to each other and we were talking to our senior leadership to look at, to get ideas about what that cross-site, cross-network knowledge looks like. So we had 3 monthly webinars, and we were getting those senior leaders to talk to us about what were the big science questions that each of their network is tackling, what are the instrumentation and user facilities, what are the limitations, who do they allow, who can send them samples, and what is there. And then we also talked about the model and data infrastructure among those critical zone observatories. The other thing that we did prior to even going at the workshop was to conduct a survey. So we analyzed all of the questions that were out in the literature from the different AGU communities, from other communities, to say what are the most urgent gaps and what could qualify as an indivisible problem. So we sent the survey out to our attendees in advance of the workshop, and we came to the top 9 questions, which this team thought were still unresolved and could benefit from this network of networks approach. So some of them are pretty obvious, like what are the global trends? How do you go beyond your site? What efforts are needed to make the data more accessible and open for cross-site comparisons? What are the biggest mechanisms, the common factors that can scale with space and time? What are the roles of certain plants? Are there certain places which are hotspots, things like that? So pretty interesting to have our teams coalesce, use these for the breakout sessions. So this was the actual workshop at AGU. And again, we involved several people who had worked across sites, and we heard perspectives of what were the challenges of working across these sites and across these networks. And so our breakout sessions really delve deeper into, what are the most urgent gaps? Who needs to be involved in this? What are the biggest challenges to be able to tackle these indivisible problems? And how and when can we develop this roadmap to improve the communication channels between early career folks? And what you see in the images are training on R and then FTICR opportunities that were offered to the attendees. So from the breakouts, we could clearly see like people coming together, and they were asking these questions, very scientific questions about generating hypotheses. And they went into this mode. So one example here on the right is that people observed weathering did not result in an increase in porosity or permeability at the watershed scale, which is like a negative finding. You never find that. And so they immediately were asking the question, what other regions or sites could this phenomena be observed? And then there was this other group which was looking at carbon interactions, and they were like, oh, this, we really need high quality automated data systems to be able to tackle some of these carbon chemistry questions. So they were like drilling down into smaller scales, and they were like, we need these data across all of these field sites. We want data from all of these field observatories that would help us generate some of the hypotheses that they had within their particular site. So they were aiming for data synthesis at a range of scales through that breakout. And then, there were others where people were talking about, sites that had disturbance issues and were already facing like heat waves. What could be first responders' jobs like for this heat wave and disturbance? Like, how quickly can you go out after floods, after fires, after heat waves? What kind of data can we collect? What's needed? And then, there were, of course, modelers like myself who were thinking about what kind of benchmarks do we need? Where do we need to prevent these gaps across these models? We can go, from reactive transport continuum scale models to E3SM, Earth system type models, and what kind of data sets are needed to bridge these scales and gaps, right? So thinking about those type of benchmarks. So what, we came out of that workshop, what we heard was missing. Everybody was excited. This was a great launch pad for international engagement. And, people were happy with the training we provided. We did a post survey and they came back and said they were able to use, those trainings in their own research and projects, which was amazing. But what we were hearing again, it was that there was a missing piece, which was how do you enhance communication and collaboration? So what we did beyond the early cohort team, beyond that workshop, was to create a website where you could just put your name. So there's a directory there and you can list, your names there. What do you do? What are your interests? And you can connect with other early careers or different careered people to say, what they are working on, critical zone community, and what type of questions are they asking. And then we also launched this library where, people can support, and this was really to have that collaboration or engagement to be ongoing, is to just share, if you have a recent focused article that speaks to this critical zone observatory, then just send us that article, we'll put it on the website. So it gives them a bit of, networking and opens their set a little bit more. And then, in the post survey, something that was really exciting to view was that we had early career cohorts only from the top 5 critical zone networks that are listed here. But we really were able to get more people, even beyond our early career cohort team. So we had people from Denmark, from Hawaii, from China, from the Nivole Observatory come and participate in that workshop. And then we asked them the question, what kind of connections do you want amongst each other? And a lot of people said, yes, we want to collaborate. We want to go beyond our sites. And we want to diversify the type of questions that we are asking. And we want to diversify and expand that participation even beyond our particular site and our particular network. So then we asked a follow-on question, which was, what is making it hard for you to collaborate across these cross sites and cross networks? And the obvious issues are, of course, funding is a big issue. Without that, it's hard to do this. But something else that came out was data availability and human resource, but also data harmonization. So we made the data availability and so by human resources, this means that I know that data is available on the Torino site. I just cannot make sense of it. What is that metadata? Where was it collected? I'm not really sure. Right? So we were like, okay, maybe you can use our directory to connect to that person. If I'm doing ET or evapotranspiration fluxes on my particular site, and I'm using a particular type of instrument because mine is a mountainous site, I'll put all of those details there. You can have that data. And now it's like, how do you harmonize that data? So that was a big question that kept creeping into this. And that's why we want to focus on some of those efforts from the script we want to hear. So then come 2020, we had, new volunteers on the cohort team. And, it's so fantastic that this is just being, from word of mouth, this has been growing from 49 in the first year where we had really small participation. And this was a COVID year and we had much bigger participation in our workshop. We got more volunteers on the cohort team. We got volunteers that were that had completely different disciplines than the prior network team. And then we had some type of rotation as well. We also got a lot of interest from the tropical sites like Uruguay and Indian sites who were just starting and they wanted to participate in this as well. So again, like the previous workshop, we were marching ahead and we were doing all of these webinars prior to our workshop to provide some, guidance and targeted activities for our workshop. So we did 2 different webinars in 2020. One of them was to link up with the new NSF Critical Zone Collaborative Network and hear from the NSF scientists as to what kind of synthesis and collaborations were they planning. And then the second one was we reached out to a bunch of scientists who had done data synthesis, and we wanted to hear from them, like, what were the lessons learned? And, is this a useful exercise? And what are the challenges? And again, the data harmonization, data synthesis, biggest issues that we heard from them. So at the workshop itself, we wanted to ensure that there is communication across these teams and across these networks. So how we organized this was we did 5 researchers across 5 networks give us lightning talks to, the first team there, they just talked about one process and how they were looking at that process across different sites. So they were talking about how does precipitation variability impact critical zone functioning? And then we had another 5 researchers just talk about tools that they were using within their research. And this was done really to cross-fertilize ideas. So, if in my site there is precipitation variability, it's because of plants, or, we're seeing shifts in plants. Are other critical zones networks seeing that? Have they, recorded those type of data sets to be able to go back and view it? And then the other one was, the use of AI and machine learning applications. People were using it in novel ways. And we didn't see really a merger. So it was like, here's my AI tool. Do you want to downscale your precipitation in your network? Go ahead, use this tool. So there were definitely opportunities that came out of this particular workshop and the way that we engaged them. The other thing that we did at this workshop was also get in our program managers and directors to hear, what are the similarities and interests across and what could be shared goals across these different agencies and how they were viewing this team to go forward. And so they were definitely interested. They posted some opportunities where this team could further expand, ExcelNet being one of them. And then there was a call out for white papers from the DOE side of things, which was on AI for ESP, for improving AI frameworks for Earth system predictability. And that's something that this team participated in as well. And it's coming up pretty soon. In the next few months, they're organizing a series of workshops. And, so we also did some breakouts and moved from theory to application, basically, and identified within this group, like, what are shared interests among the attendees, and how do we synthesize some of these things? So what we found was we had tons of microbiological data sets, which was surprising in critical zone networks. And people wanted to, use AI, machine learning, and different types of tools to be able to analyze that data. And so that is just one framework. They have a single framework, and it's called Grow, and they've gotten other people to contribute to their data. They've been collecting data sets, which is amazing, like how equal and harmonized it is. And then there was another team which is more focused on the concentration discharge type of analysis, another team that was looking at disturbance and hydrologic data and model synthesis and the like. So what we were trying to really do here was like identify the interests, but also look at the literature to identify some of the high priority science questions. And we also asked, our attendees, are there past examples that we can revisit? So you can use these new tools that have been introduced to you to look at the same prior data and see if it generates new hypotheses, or add on more data to that and see, if your hypothesis remains the same. So we definitely are progressing still in this direction, where we are thinking about synthesis across these sites, and we're trying to identify champions for some of these activities. But I think funding is still a big issue for us to coalesce around this. So this was a post-survey after our second AGU workshop. So again, we were hearing that people do find value in sharing these data, tools, and approaches. Like 72% said very valuable. But the other thing is that we do need incentives and assistance. So, the motivation for some of this group to come together is networking, getting papers out, collaborating with other teams. And I think for that, we are looking for funding for synthesis and tools to standardize and validate some of the data. So that's still a big issue for this team to be thinking about those harmonization aspects. And so, from coming out of that workshop, we thought about calling on the community to build more interest on these transdisciplinary investigations and, forming working groups and cross-fertilizing research projects. And our longer term goal still being, thinking about writing those synthesis papers, enabling fair usage. Some of the things that we talked about was doing joint field campaigns, doing experiments that get launched at the same time across these critical zone network sites. And we talked about, like newer sites, like I mentioned, the Indian tropical sites, which were just coming up. And we were thinking about, can this team come up with protocols for what's needed for sampling, analysis? How do you put that into your data frame? What are the standards and ontology that would be the right for these new sites to be able to access and use? And we were definitely thinking about cross-fertilization and coordinated investments across these sites and networks. So even beyond the workshops, we've been able to fulfill some of those visions that we had. One of them was launching the special issue in WRR and Earth's Future. It's open now until next year, March 31st. And again, we're just calling out, the community to focus on what are those shared questions? What are the next generation data tools? How do you share them? And how do you promote interdisciplinary investigations? And we are open to those type of articles. And we have some of these things in the works, which is thinking about those survey questions and publishing them with a forward-leaning commentary article, thinking about what are the critical zone theories that this team is suited to test and apply. And, even before we do that, we are looking into these, we're launching these quasi-cyber seminar series. We just got over this first one, which was again, bringing together those people and with specific landscape characteristics this time. So the first series was really bringing together people who are working in similar sites and what are the latest state-of-the-art questions that they're stumbling across. So an example is for the Arctic sites, they don't yet know how the groundwater contributions are changing and to what scale would they be important going forward. So that's a shared question among all of those observatories and who are working in the Arctic type of sites. And they want to talk to each other and they want to be able to, take that platform and they're talking to each other now, thanks to that series. In the second series here, I think I shared the link in the chat. We're really moving from those science questions now to thinking about what are those tools that are necessary for integrating and synthesizing data from across these sites. And, lessons learned, what have people done? So we have one of our cyber seminars is going to be targeting experiments that have gone beyond sites. And they're really looking at national scale and even international scale observations. And then a third series, which would happen next year, is that this team is thinking about synthesis in action across these sites. So we'll use the quasi platform as we are doing synthesis with the data, with the tools that we get from series 2. So that's the plan. And we have a few other engagements coming up at the AGU. We have another workshop for this year. We also did a town hall for this year, and just want to hear from the community what their perspectives are, what they're thinking about. And we are really working pretty closely with the NSF critical zone PIs, and we also, are invited to the education and outreach RCN from the NSF side of things, and we're still looking for funding to be able to do a lot that we've promised. For this group, I just have the last two slides, I promise. I think, as I said multiple times, is we really stumble, like there is tons of data that we've seen from the webinars, which is really cutting across from the bedrock to the top of canopy. But the metadata, the ontologies, they totally mean different things for different people and the way they've been collecting them. So I think it is really challenging for this team to be able to do all of the above, like start from a question, synthesize all of the data that we have, harmonize that data. And, so it's hard. Some of the things that we've been collecting is just from the literature. What we are hearing is inconsistent metadata for especially hydrogeochemistry data sets. Even like within the same group, you could have different things happening. And an example here is the USGS database. If you look at the nutrient data, especially nitrate, it is listed in 32 name unit combinations. This is a new paper that came out, which the link you can see there, and this is the table from them. And some of them are useless because they don't even carry a unit. So it's hard to use that data. It exists, but we don't know what the units are. And sometimes it's called in forms that it makes it useless to be able to be used. And then this one is another paper that came out from Sue Brantley and really going across multiple groups. And this is for low temperature geochemists. And what they're saying is, we're on the bottom part of this framework where it's more, the journals have asked me to release the data. What am I going to do? Am I going to fix everything? No, I'm going to do the easiest thing. I'm going to share the R tool, which is reusable, but then who knows what was changed as you publish your final data. So definitely, we want to be able to go to that highly structured databases where we have the relational database as well, especially for CZO type of work. We need, not just individual data sets, we need all of the additional ones. So definitely there are opportunities to interact with this group and learn more. And with that, that's my final slide. We do have a network website and a workshop website for this year coming up in AGU. So I'll stop there. Thank you for listening in. And I'll take any questions for you guys.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I guess the first question that comes to mind is, have you maybe picked a observation or a topic and done a comparison study? So it looked like you did with the nitrogen example that you threw up there, just to sort of assess what the actual heterogeneity in the measurements is versus whether it's just nomenclature.
No, we are not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what, the part that we have done is we know our science questions and we know the working groups. So we have 4 different working groups, and we're going to go in this year to be able to, either use a database that is consistent. So we're not even touching other databases, but there are other groups, like not every group is like that. There are other groups who are looking to get data from other databases, and yeah, we're not there yet. We're hoping this second series is going to tell us more and have like more information before doing that deep dive.
I mean, it sounds like a gnarly problem. Thinking of just working with the soils and then trying to integrate the hydrology and the disturbance observations as well on top of that. Yep. Does anyone else have other questions? Otherwise, I'll keep peppering her. So what ontologies seem to be floating to the top, or what type of semantic tools have you guys looked at to try to address this space?
Yeah, so one of the databases did have ontology listed there, and they were telling all the other databases to use the same one, but it's so hard to convince our program managers to be able to do it. So it's more like we have an assigned human. That's why I said, we wanted more communication with this team and like one-on-one, but it's just so hard that, yeah, we haven't delved deeper. As I said before, I think one of the things that we are trying to do is this microbiology data where people are just, sending samples out. So if you're out in a river or something, you can just request them to send you the vials and everything. So they have everything marked like, this is how we want the samples to be collected. Send us back to our lab. That's how they're reported. So there's no difference. And that's one of the data sets that we are comfortable doing the AI type of techniques because it has the right language and, but there are some others, and it's such an incredible data that's out there to be used, and it's so hard. So we are, I'm saying the same things again, but we are looking forward to the series to be able to figure out some of those tools that would help us harmonize it. And we are hearing from a lot of teams who've done this like 1,000 river experiments, or they're, collecting data across multiple global sites. And, we want to hear from them lessons learned and what were the pitfalls to avoid, so to speak. And this paper that I just showed you, it basically says, it's similar to our viewpoint, which is don't even go into creating a new database. That's going to be hard. But, just use what's out there with the tools that you have, but there has to be some data cleaning and data harmonization that needs to be done. So. Yeah, I would like to hear your views. Like what are the things that we should be aware of apart from the ones that I already listed? And, it's even with the soil bulk density, that was a big effort. So this is all of the geochemistry and everything combined. Yeah, it's super hard.
I think I'm going to stop the recording right now. See if anyone wanted to pipe up off record.